Tell me a little bit about your background and particularly how you got involved sort of in space and space technology.
Sure. Yeah, I was born and raised here in Quito, Ecuador. And unfortunately, in Ecuador, space is not something common or something that people or children think about as career path. And there's a big misconception here in Ecuador that, or in Latin American emerging countries, that space is not for us. It's for Americans, the space is for, and it's not something we should be seeing. And this is true for children, for parents, and for also people in industry, government. It's just not a priority, and it's understandable. Other priorities as healthcare, education, but still getting behind on space is not ideal for the country. It's also for another one of the problems is that people don't understand the benefits of space that come along. Sometimes it's going up and wasting money, as a lot of people think, but actually there's a lot of impact and benefits that come down for Earth. So yeah, when I was a child, I would hear this a lot, and I didn't like what I heard. So um, thankfully, I was very good at math. I like more real things. I was really on into the Mars rovers. The Curiosity mission was a big one for me. The space telescopes, the Apollo
Okay.
missions, even though they were little
Uh-huh.
in the back, like history already. Like missions to Mars were very awe-inspiring for me. Like it's something that I said, hey, we can do that too. Yeah, so I was very good at math and science. I was very good at physics. I would always be national high ranking in the national competitions in math and also in physics. So I felt like I had the skill set to do it. And I wanted to go for the biggest challenge. So I decided to
Uh-huh.
become an aerospace engineer. And of course, that was not possible here in Ecuador. So I had to leave the
Okay.
country at age 18 to study aerospace engineering. I went to Worcester Polytechnic Institute in Massachusetts, where I did both my bachelor and my master's. And yeah, and what I was telling you about all that, how the misconceptions here in the country are, I realized that studying engineering was not enough. Like I had to also study something else in order for when I come back. So my idea was always to come back, which I have done now, not just a desire from when I was a child, was to come back and teach, to show that we can do these things. You see? So I also studied education. So I
Okay.
majored in engineering, but I also got licensed to teach by the state of Massachusetts, teach physics. So that's the skill set gathered also around education has
Okay.
helped me a lot in bringing space to Ecuador and Latin America. Yeah, that's a little bit of my background there.
So when you returned to Ecuador, did you found your company at that point?
Yes. So upon graduation, I moved to Germany. Job. I worked for the firma Silver Athena. So we did electronic control units for aircraft.
Okay.
So I was good. I was happy. I had a good job. I was learning. I was making aircraft, which I did it. My concentration was in satellites. So astrospace. So doing aircraft was not the best, but it was still pretty cool. And I had a really good life, like good salary. I had a nice apartment, a very good. I had good vacations and everything. So I was living what one would call the dream, right? Living in Europe, like having a stable life. But for some reason, it didn't feel like it was my dream. It felt like somebody else's dream. As I told you before, my dream was always to come back and teach and share what I've learned. And also in Germany, I felt like I was one more of the engineers. Whereas I knew that if I came back, my presence here would have a better or a more impactful development on things, on technology. So that is when I started getting involved with the space
Sure.
industry. I
Yep.
attended the International Astronautical Congresses and started talking to Latin American actors. And I realized that it's not necessary that you are either in the US or Europe or Russia or the first world to be part of the industry. So the space industry is very globalized, very well connected. It's also a little small. So it was, I realized that, hey, I don't have to keep living here where I can come back and try to push forward space in Ecuador. It doesn't really matter that there's not a market yet in the country as the industry is so well connected. We can start working with the worldwide community. So that then is when I came back. Fun fact is that it was just the pandemic was just starting. So it was like 15 cases in Germany when I came back. There were none in Ecuador at the moment. And then, well, lockdown started, and that's when I had all the time in the world to start what is Astralintu right now. So yeah, the beginning I didn't know what exactly we were going to be doing. I just knew we needed to have a startup in place and offering space in Latin America.
And so is it education based or is it engineering based? What's the kind of the foundation of the company?
Oh, Astralintu is purely technology. But I like your question because as I couldn't, I can never break apart my background. I always say that my profession is engineering, but my vocation is teaching. So I also worked while I was working, and as I said, we realized that there's not a local market. So what Astralintu does is we provide space logistics, so pretty much space services. So we're trying to bridge the gap between Latin American student or university or early stage startup from developing a payload and getting it to space to really get the benefits to be able to commercialize it. So right now, there's a lot of payloads sitting in Latin America that are not getting space to flight, mainly because of cost and also development, right? Like you have the payload, maybe you have the scientific experiment idea, but you don't have the experience to make the whole mission or the whole satellite. And that takes time. So we created Astralintu to be able to support these projects, and we do integral from integration to launch and also mission operations and data downlink. We do all around. So the idea is that a person gets a payload in place and we take it to space. And yeah, so we provide all the services. And if you don't need all of them, we can just do downlink. We can just do integration.
Is all the process to launch payloads from Ecuador?
That's an idea. Of course, everybody in the space industry knows the importance of having an equatorial orbit or equatorial line launch site. So being from Ecuador, being here, it's something we know it's a possibility, but it's in the long term. We don't real as of now, it's not feasible to do it. We're starting with the missions, and then of course we hope that it evolves to have a small launch site and then a bigger one. And of course, when societies become interplanetary, equatorial launch sites and spaceports are very very important. And so we're pointing towards that. But for now, it's realizing where we are now and bringing the whole. The idea is to make a Latin American ecosystem for space. Because if we want to have the spaceport that in the future, we need it to be sourced. We need to have trained individuals also working there. So we have to go step by step, and building the infrastructure, building the ecosystem is the first way to go. And Astralintu looks to lead that emergence into new space, because traditional space for us was not possible. Like our governments didn't have as I said, they don't know, but also they didn't have it as a priority. Now with new space, private companies are taking the lead in Latin America, Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Mexico, Ecuador, Costa Rica. And we are building that ecosystem and we're right in time because we're joining the whole new space transition worldwide. And it's good. As you mentioned, how do we do it with the integration into the launch vehicle? We have signed a partnership with the Orbit, which has the Ion spacecraft, the orbital transfer vehicle flying. And we just announced that there will be 13 missions flying next year.
Very good.
And we're in charge of the Latin American and Caribbean market. So to get customers on board and help them also, like we can put their payloads directly into the eye and do a in-orbit demonstration, get the data down. So we're joining, right. The Orbit is leading new space in Europe, and we're partnering with them to do as well for Latin America. And so it's going well in that sense.
Yeah. And do you expect to go into
That's a great question. That a lot. Yeah, you mentioned how if Astralintu is technological or educational, we also are working in a foundation that we collaborate closely. It's called the Sideralis Foundation. And at Sideralis, I'm the STEM program director, and that's where my education gets to flourish. And we work with students. We have a summer camp called Sidernautas that teaches robotics, programming, space, ecosystem, and microbiology, all targeted to space. And when we do these activities, we recently did the Club for the Future activity. So we partner with the IAF and Club for the Future from Blue Origin. to bring postcards to students in Ecuador that they will be sent to space and back. So when we were doing the activities with the children in rural areas in the city, they would always ask like if I would go to space, and maybe their teachers told them I was an aerospace engineer, that I was coming, but if they understood astronaut sometimes, and they were like all excited about it. So I would always tell them not yet. I hope that that space is privatizing and more private missions are coming up, civilians going into space. I think it could be a possibility also to have engineer startups taking these flights for scientific purposes, for education purposes. Who knows? Yeah, I think it's a possibility. I always answer that the likelihood is not zero. Like it's actually not that. I think that question, like before, maybe 20 years ago, would you go to space? Was a question like, would you do this thing that seems impossible? Yeah. I think now it's so possible with the private, like the privates and the Falcons being so effective, and also the Blue Origins, that now maybe that question should transition to maybe, would you go to Mars? Would you do that? Would you go away and stay there, probably not coming back?
Do you think there'll be a moon base?
But in our lifetimes, I think there will be a lunar base.
Okay.
Yeah, like 30, 40 maybe.
I kind of agree. So what's the new news? What's the that you're working on at the moment that's exciting for the company, or for you personally, or for education side of your mind?
Yeah, really hosted the Global Conference for Emerging Countries here in Quito. It's at the IAF event. So every year there's the International Astronomical Congress, but also there's these global conferences. And for this year, the theme was emerging countries. And we did the bid to host it here in Ecuador. So it happened in May.
Excellent.
And it was a great opportunity. We had people from all over the world here, very high profile people attended, like heads of big companies, like Thales Alenia, Lockheed Martin, Airbus. We also had the president of the IAF and all these, and the vice presidents and people from NASA, ESA. So it was a very well attended conference, and it was great to have them here because the focus of the conference was to start a discussion on how to get emerging countries involved in the space industry, which is exactly what Astralintu and the Cereales Foundation are trying to do. And we're very happy to share and to know that there's a big push also from the bigger players to help to integrate, because they know that just with their Artemis course, it's getting to the moon or getting to the next phase or growing the industry needs from everybody. And Latin America is a big market, a lot of people, a lot of resources, and having Latin America and the other emerging countries, Africa as well, be an active part of this industry just makes it so that it's best for everyone. So we had really good conversations on how to develop an ecosystem, how to connect government, industry, and society, how to educate, and how to share the benefits of space with people so that they know, with stakeholders, with government. And yeah, we had a really great week with of discussions, and of course it was great because other Latin American countries were here as well, and everybody got to talk and network.
Excellent.
So right now I know that there's some projects and collaboration ideas going forward. So we really hope that this event creates a legacy for what's the space in our region and also for emerging countries. So right now, the big thing, the big news is to not let all these fall behind. So carry the momentum that we built with you coming to the International Astronomical Congress in Paris and bring more solid ideas of what was discussed, present the outcomes of the event. And one of the outcomes of the event was the partnership that I just described to you about the orbit. So continue working so that other Latin American startups can build partnerships with European actors and just keep the ball rolling. And we have some educational activities that also arose from the event. So, for example, the Cereales Foundation is working with One Voice for Change based in Colorado. And they are working with Helium Space also to give out these satellite simulators to children. So initially it was given in the United States and in some schools in Central America. Right now, through the foundation, we're working to bring it to Ecuador and also different cities and also maybe other countries. So we are bringing those satellite scenes or making competitions. Then the satellite simulators then go up in aerostatic balloons into space. Children get the data, the telemetry. So start building the ecosystem from children, but also work on the upper levels. So promote competitions for universities, that's things like that. Yeah, that's like the big thing to keep pushing.
Congress. It sounds like it was a
Thank
very
you.
worthwhile endeavor. So
Yeah.
if there was
It
one
was.
message that you'd really like to, maybe to people who are not really thinking about space, maybe if you're not really thinking or haven't been thinking about space, and there was one message that you wanted to put out there, what would that be?
Yeah, I always then like to say that well, the only thing you need is initiative, and initiative is all it takes to change the world. And you just have to dare to do space, to not listen to what people are saying, to realize these are misconceptions, to study to get to know your physics, to know your math, but also get a broader worldview, how the world really works, how the economy works. And when you have that, you are ready to take the initiative and start something interesting, something big, something in space that will benefit a lot of people. So yeah, not to get discouraged by the media, by certain parties, just keep going forward. That's how we all go to space. And that's common on all the big missions. Like at some point, some group of people got together and dared to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the exciting part of this industry where we're expanding the frontiers.